Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Pluralsight Spotlight. I'm your host for this episode, Adam Gunn. If you're new for the series, let me set the table for what you're going to learn with us over the next 20 minutes or so. Our Spotlight series is a chance to meet some of the incredible people that make the Pluralsight brand awesome. We'll dive into their personal backstories and hopefully share some fun experiences and insights that will help make your career just a little bit better at whatever you're doing. My guest today is a longtime course author on the Pluralsight platform. He started his career in IT, developing applications for a robust corporate intranet, and quickly grew into a leadership role, and there learned the value of soft skills like communication, change management, and career planning. He is now a regular speaker, blogger, and entrepreneur, founder of jibberjobber.com, sharing his wisdom and knowledge at events, on his blog, and of course on the Pluralsight platform. Let's give a warm Spotlight welcome to Jason Alba. Jason, welcome to the Spotlight.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you on this cold Utah afternoon. We love to start Spotlight by talking about your backstory. We know you're a Pluralsight author, but back way up, like that little career jaunt into IT, like how did you end up on that path?
I went to lunch with a friend and we were talking about career stuff. And I was telling him that I was really excited to go into international business. That's what my degree was going to be. And he was like, man, have you looked at programming? It's so cool. And he said the thing that turned me completely off from it. He said, you get to learn new stuff every day. And I was like, I don't want to learn new stuff every day. I'm going to learn Spanish and I'm going to learn business and then I'm going to go have a great career and it's going to be fun. And so anyways, fast forward a couple years, I changed universities and the school I went to didn't have that degree. And I started looking at the other degrees in the College of Business. And the one that really stood out to me was the technical one, computer information systems. And so I went to my first class. It was a programming class, Visual Basic. And I kind of fell in love. Like it was, I'm not going to say it was like overly easy, but it just felt good. It felt natural. It was just logical. It was the way that I thought. And so that kind of kicked me into a different path than what I thought I was going to do for my whole career.
Okay. And then I've been trying to save this big reveal, but I don't think I have it. But your passion area is soft skills, communication, entrepreneurship. So where in that IT journey did you really cement those areas of expertise and interest?
I think that interest was always there. Like I've always been kind of entrepreneurial, tried little startups as a kid and as a pre-adult. And I was always interested in hey, if I buy 10 of these, I can upsell them and make some money. And when I was little, I had a lawn mowing business. I just liked the idea of going out and making money and buying whatever I wanted to. When I started in business, my first real job was as an intern, and I was programming in Cold Fusion. Hardly anybody knows about Cold Fusion anymore, but it was awesome. I liked it. It was something that I felt comfortable in. And as an intern, it was like I was almost a little bit of an outsider. Like I could observe what was happening in the organization, without feeling threatened. So for example, there was a point where they decided to take our office and move it across the state. And it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but we're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 hour drive. And a lot of people were like, I have kids here. I'm not leaving here, even though it's going to be hard to find another job like this. I'm not going to pick up just to move with the company 5 hours away. And so I'm just sitting on the sidelines watching this happen because I already had plans for when I was going to finish school. I was going to move somewhere else and work at a different company. And so just watching how leadership came up with their ideas and strategies, how their decisions impacted people, what people talked about, what people were concerned about, I was in my happy place, just observing the dynamics of all of that. And so I think probably if you knew me well, you would describe me as someone who likes to observe others. I love watching what other people do and what makes them successful and what motivates them. And so all of that was just a real natural foundation for a lot of the courses that I work on now.
Yeah. I want to dive in. You recently wrote a blog post that I found via your Twitter, and you gave some great advice to others who are maybe have that entrepreneurial itch. And a lot of developers and engineers have that. So I loved that blog post, but you had a list of kind of best practices or advice. And the first one, a little bit of a hot take maybe, but you said, fail at your most important income stream, which I hear like you basically are telling people to feel okay to fail at your job. Give some context to that and why you think that's important in that entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So first of all, my message is never to be subpar at your job. I think you should always go above and beyond and bring your very best to your actual role. One of the reasons why is because you never know who's watching you, right? Like sometimes you might feel like things are getting boring, or you've already done all the growing you're going to do, but you have no idea what the other executives or leaders in the organization are watching and looking for, and they might pick you to go be on their team. So I'm always an advocate of excelling in, what you should be doing in your job, what you're getting paid for. Let me reword that first point of the 7 points from that blog post. The way I failed was I got laid off, right? And so it really isn't like, don't be good at what you're doing. It's more of, if you want to jump on a very serious entrepreneurial journey, you might have to leave your full-time job. And that's hard. I had a friend of mine years ago when I started Jibber Jobber, he said, Jason, I would never have the guts to do what you've done. And I was like, well, let me tell you how to have the guts. First, get fired. Like, not because you want to be, and I wasn't fired, I was laid off, but like losing that big thing was a burn the ship moment. It was a time where you're like, okay, well, I have plenty of time, and so let's see what I'm really made of. Let's see what I can really do without someone else telling me how I should fill my day.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously there's a lot of uncertainty in the tech world right now. A lot of companies doing layoffs, a lot of what you just experienced and have experienced going on. Do you have any advice, or what recommendations do you have for individuals who might be finding themselves on a similar path?
My wife has gotten to the point when friends, because I've been in this like job search career space since 2006, right? And so that's how people think I'm a coach, or I'm going to look at their resume or whatever. So people go to my wife and say, oh, my husband just got laid off and we're so scared. And my wife's gotten to the point where the first thing she says is, congratulations. Like, this might be the greatest thing that has ever happened to you. And it doesn't feel like it right now. And I'm not going to say that, congratulations to the tens of thousands of people who are getting noticed, but there are some opportunities out there, whether they're in different industries, they're in completely different roles. Maybe you're at a job that you just didn't like and you really wanted to do something else. I feel like myself getting laid off was a big push to go in a direction that I knew I needed to go, but I was just kind of too afraid to take that step. So I think, really number one, just get yourself grounded and start to think about the opportunities that are out there. As a job seeker, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of opportunities, especially right now with this economy, a lot more announcements of layoffs and stuff like that. It feels like nobody's doing anything positive. You'll see online people are like, I applied to 100 positions and never heard anything back. I'll tell you right now, there are opportunities out there. It might mean that you do it on your own, but maybe you've been wanting to do that anyways.
Yeah, I love that. And another thing I know you're passionate about, and as the SVP of brand at Pluralsight, I'm passionate about it, but that is personal branding. What is personal branding to you, and how do you think it relates to, the career paths of developers and engineers?
All right. Tell me what you think of this, because you're a brand guy.
Yeah.
So I came up with this phrase, and I've seen it used quite a bit since I've been pushing it out a few years ago. I came up with this idea that your personal brand is not necessarily what you want it to be or what you say it is. Your brand is how others perceive you. And that's it. It's how they talk about you when you're not around, what they think about you, what they recommend you to certain people or for certain roles. That's what your brand is, how others perceive you. How does that feel?
I'm 100% aligned.
Okay, there you go.
That is how I view brand as well.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that, and a lot of people, so I'll go into audiences and I'll say, let's say there's 100 people in the room, and I'll say, how many people here have a personal brand? And usually I get about 5 people, right? 5% of the audience, and they'll raise their hand and they'll tell me what their brand is. And usually it's like over polished or full of jargon, or it's just really ambiguous, right? And I never feel good about what their brand is. And then we go on and we talk about what your brand is. But one of the main things that I point out is whether you think you have a brand or not, you have a brand, because people at your work and in your neighborhood and the people that know you perceive you in a certain way. So you have a brand. The next question becomes, is it what I want it to be? And how do I make it into what I want it to be?
Yeah. I think that's a incredibly great perspective on brand. Are there aspects of brand that are, like, in an engineer's mind, like they're probably thinking of like what processes and programs, how can I engineer this to my advantage? Are there certain aspects of personal brand that you can build personal philosophies around that can control or help mold that perception?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to like systematize or put this into a process. What I've found with the people that I talk with, the most important thing is to understand that they have a brand, which we just talked about. I have professional marketers who come to me and say, hey, I'm ready to work on my personal brand. I've been working on branding for this massive company that everybody's heard about, and I don't even know where to start on my own brand. And I'm like, it's really a lot of the same stuff, right? So, and I have a course on personal branding, and I talk about a lot of different like tools and ideas on how to kind of narrow down how you want other people to perceive you. But you really have to start at that foundational, what do I want people to say about me? What do I want people to think about me? And then start coming up with communication. It might be in an email signature. I think it's a missed opportunity for a lot of people. To put a little brand statement in their email signature. And you can do that wrong, right? You can do it with jargon, and you can do it with stuff that it's like, I have no idea what this actually means. But there is an opportunity to just share who you are and how you want people to think about you.
Yeah. Something I've coached and mentored young professionals on is have a superpower, like back to perceptions. Like, it's not in the words you put on a page as much as like, what do people see that you can do that may differentiate you? I don't know if you know David Neal, developer friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
Incredible illustrator.
Yeah.
Like that becomes, his brand.
Yep.
Engineers who are also incredible photographers or musicians, like those, they might not see them as superpowers, but they often, create unique perspectives on them that shape and mold that perspective and perception that's really interesting. So it may not be the same in the developer world, but with designers, like reviewing 100 design portfolios, they start to all look the same. But if you have a differentiating superpower, it can often rise you to the top of those kind of competitive situations.
Yeah, and that's really the power of the brand. When I think of David Neal, I think of like beard and bacon, like a drawing of bacon, right? Brands are important. One of the things I think a lot of people miss is like, well, I'm an excellent developer. Okay, well, everybody else thinks you're a jerk. So what's the brand? The being a great at what you do, like developer, product manager, leader, manager, whatever, a lot of times that's a given. We have this assumption that you're pretty good at the role because you have the role, right? I think you are good at corporate branding because that's what your role is, right? I also think you're a pretty nice, chill person. And when I think about you, I'll always think, oh yeah, he's great at what he does and he's a nice person. And I'm going to recommend you more because you're a nice person who's competent than I would if you were a competent person who was a jerk, right?
Yep. Yeah. And those are the subtle little things that I think are so coachable. Like, how available are you on Slack? What's your tone when you approach people in an email? Like, those little details do become, the brand. And perceptions can be made like on a first impression. Like, every interaction really matters. So you and I could talk brand for we don't have enough podcast.
Let me throw one more thing in. I'm thinking about when you go in for a job interview, like I said, there's this idea that you're competent enough to do what's in the job description. In the first, second, third, fourth interview and the team interviews and all those things, they're not necessarily wondering if you're competent. They feel like the recruiter has already figured out that you're competent. They're looking for a fit. They want to know if they're going to enjoy working with you or if they're going to get beat up for bringing you in and kind of ruining the culture that the organization has been building. This branding stuff and the soft skills stuff, it's real. It has an impact on how we get jobs and how we keep jobs and who we get to work with.
Yeah. So let's dive into your course library, the Jason Alba library on Pluralsight, because again, I think it's a underappreciated part of the Pluralsight platform that we have these soft skill, courses on the platform and available. But you've been authoring for Pluralsight for
10 and a half years.
Yeah, 10 years. There's a lot of Jason Alba courses. Like, is there a starting point? Like, if someone's interested in these soft skills and personal branding, like, would you guide anyone anywhere in particular?
Because I have a variety of kind of topics within soft skills, it depends on what your issues are, what your needs are. If someone is having career issues or they're unsatisfied in their job or they're looking for something new, then I definitely recommend like my personal branding course and my informational interviews course. Those are the two courses I always recommend for anyone who's in transition. Informational interviews is about, it's what I call networking on steroids, or very focused networking. So don't think about networking on steroids as like going crazy and being super extroverted and talking to everyone. It's more of having a very strategic plan of, I need to network to this point in a company. How do I get there? And the informational interviews is a process to help you narrow in. For people that are, techies, developers, people who are very technical, the one that I feel like gets recommended a lot is becoming a better listener, how to become a better listener. And I didn't think this course was going to take off, honestly. I didn't think very many people were going to listen to it. It's one of my top courses. And I think what happened was managers would know that one of their developers was going to go into a leadership meeting, and they'd say, hey, you need to watch this course on listening before you go into that meeting. I'm not sure if that's what happened, but I was surprised because when I started the course, I thought everybody knows how to listen. Like, listening is kind of an intuitive thing. We just do it. I think what I didn't understand was how many poor listeners there are, and that there are ways that we can become better listeners. And so that's a course I always recommend. The course that's my favorite, though, I think this is the Change the World course, is Leading with Emotional Intelligence. I thought emotional intelligence was kind of a fluffy concept, and some people just put it together to have something to counter IQ. So we have EQ versus IQ. And the more I dug into emotional intelligence, I started to realize if we paid attention to what are part of the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence and focused even just on one aspect of one pillar and made that, a focus for the rest of our lives, our workplace would get so much better. Our personal lives, the world, politics, life would just be so much more delightful if there were people out there with higher emotional intelligence. So that will always be a favorite course of mine. And I think it's the one where I'm going to, when my kids are ready to go to Pluralsight, I'm going to say, go watch that course, because that is one that really gets to the soul of who you are.
I love that. And something I think that's really unique for you as an author is you're very active on Twitter, and you kind of share the course creation process with your followers.
Yeah.
What drove you to that, and what's the thought process behind being transparent in your creation journey?
Well, I mean, I started blogging in 2006, and back then this was before really the social networks kind of took over and took away from blogging. And back in those days, it was all about being authentic and genuine. And I'm really big on sharing the journey. I feel like I'm not like this guru sitting on a hill and I'll tell you everything I did or that you should do, because there's so many circumstances that'll make your path different than mine. But I really, for years, I've been really big on saying, hey, here's something I just learned. Here's something that I experienced as an entrepreneur or as a manager or as a developer or whatever. So I kind of take that spirit into Twitter. I also know there's a lot of people who are interested in making courses, and they think that Pluralsight courses are pretty awesome. One of the things that I've seen is Pluralsight courses have this level of quality that is different than what you might find in other platforms. And that's kind of been communicated quite a bit to us. Like, we need to do high quality audio, high quality visuals. We need to have stories and flows and all this stuff. And so when I get approached by people that say, hey, I want to make a course on whatever, it makes me think about how I would coach them and what I'd recommend to them. So what I do on Twitter is I'll preface it with behind the scenes. I put behind the scenes : and then I'll talk about it usually happens while I'm in the thick of making a course. So I might talk about something with a slide design that, I used to make slide designs like this for when I was on stage, but for my courses, here's like this weird, really small little nuance that I'll adjust. One of the things that I think about quite a lot is, might not sound like it right now, but in my courses, I really try and take something and really narrow it down, right? And take away the filler words and take away distractions. And so sometimes I'll put, here's a phrase that I had in my script. And as I read through that, I usually go through a script about 6 times before it goes live. As I read through that phrase, I took out this one word and look at how impactful removing that one word is. And instead of just saying that, instead of saying edit your stuff or whatever, I show them, the before and after. And it's interesting because I get a lot of engagement on those tweets. Like, those are the tweets where people tend to hit the heart button more often.
Yeah, well, it feels like in this learning space, there's a quality over quantity battle, and what's the greater path? Is it volumes of information, or is it distillation? And what I hear you saying is the Pluralsight authors put a lot of time, energy, and effort into the efficiency of that learning journey for the audience. You're not doing all of this for yourself. You're doing it to, as you said, improve the impact of those learning moments.
Yeah, I mean, every author that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of authors over the 10.5 years I've been involved, I mean, it's blood, sweat, and tears. Like, we're dedicated to getting our best stuff packaged up in a course and hoping that it impacts someone's career or life. And one thing I've learned is, once you start getting some comments on your courses and stuff, it's like, hey, people are really paying attention to this. I need to make sure I'm clean and I get my stuff done really well, and it's something I can be proud of. Every author I've talked to has had this level of pride of the quality of courses that we put together, which is pretty awesome to work with colleagues like that.
Yeah, it's personal brand. We've come full circle.
It's where personal brand meets corporate brand.
Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned you were observant, so I have to ask, like, what Pluralsight authors are you a fan of? Like, who do you look to as like individuals that have inspired your strategy for how you present and teach?
Well, I don't know. That I am a huge fan. Like, when I go to conferences, I always try and find Casey Ayers and Dan Appelman. Longtime friends. I really like the way they think about business and strategy. They're very systems oriented in their thinking, with a great understanding of business. And I could just sit and listen to them for hours. I enjoy them a lot. Xavier down in Costa Rica has built a studio that is amazing, and he has put in a ton of work into his courses. He's one of the foremost search experts that I know anyways. He's done some massive search projects, and some of his courses. I mean, the idea that we're learning from these amazing people that companies come and pay tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars to consult with them, and we get a peek into what they know, that's just awesome to me. Deborah Kurata, one of the Angular course authors, is a fantastic person. And you go look at her reviews, everybody loves her stuff. Like she has worked on her skill of being an author, and it shows in her courses. So
her brand is Angular. Like people make that correlation.
Yeah. I mean, you think about Angular when you think about her, but also she's just a really cool person. Like she's nice. And I think that's one of the cool things about Pluralsight. When I go to these annual meetings with the other authors, people are nice, people are approachable, and you'd never know that they have companies and conferences that are trying to get them to come keynote or whatever. They're just down to earth, nice people. And what I've seen over the years is the Pluralsight authors are anxious to touch that learner. They want to get their information in front of a learner and have it impact them. That's pretty cool.
I love that. And speaking of learners, we recently did a state of upskilling report. And in that report, one of the key findings was organizations are still having a hard time prioritizing upskilling, and learners are having a hard time finding time to learn. And I think in the current economic and circumstances, it may be compromised even more. Do you have any thoughts on organizations making time to learn and how that balances with the individual's time?
I mean, I've been privileged to be in some meetings with some CLOs with Pluralsight, and they've asked me to come in and meet with customers or prospects that are looking at buying, and I've been super impressed by some of these companies that have a structured and strategic emphasis on learning and helping their people do the learning. When I was an individual contributor, I think that's the cool way to say it now. It's like you have a lot of work to do, and oh, by the way, maybe you can go read books or do courses or whatever, but there's a lot of work to do. And at the end of the day, or a quarter, or whenever you have your one-on-ones or your reviews, you have to show that you've done the work, because you can't just go in and say, well, I watched a ton of courses and read a lot of books, so I'm better. Like, you have to contribute, right? So I think what it really comes down to, like, I would love to be to work at an organization where they focus on learning as well as productivity. I think that's awesome and amazing, and I think it's fun, and I think it builds people. At the same time, we live in an environment where people aren't staying in their job for 30 years. There's a lot of movement, there's mobility, and so then the organization is saying, why are we really investing in this person when they're going to be gone in 2 or 3 years? And they've already told us that. They've told us that we're a stepping stone for them. It's interesting that you said people finding time. It's kind of like, well, are you finding time to work out? Are you finding time to eat healthy? Like, learning and upskilling, improving your abilities, improving what you bring to the table. At the end of the day, it's on you. You have to figure it out. And if that means you're going to wake up a half an hour early, or you're going to do it over your lunch break or whatever, you have to take that responsibility. I was in a country a few years ago speaking, and after I spoke all day long, and it was interpreted, right? So it was very difficult to speak and then have a 4-second lag, right? Anyways, and there was a small group of entrepreneurs who invited me to breakfast the next morning, and they wanted me to just kind of participate and see what they were doing, and it was really awesome. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, back home, my friends are worried about like when the next episode of their show is coming out, and a lot of leisurely things. And here, these people are hyper focused on whatever their business is. And it didn't feel like it was in an unhealthy way, but I felt like there are people out there that are ready and willing to jump at opportunities where a lot of people I knew, probably including myself, were like, when can I relax next? You know? And so my point isn't to scare anybody, but it's to say, you need to work on your skills because your competition is. And by competition, I don't mean that it's like cutthroat and you need to take people out, but there are people out there who are learning and doing and trying and practicing and getting better. They might be in an interview right after you, and they're going to look a lot better if you can't talk about what you've been doing for your own personal upskilling.
Yeah. And emerging technology levels the playing field, right? I look at ChatGPT, like suddenly an ambitious individual contributor knows as much as a senior technologist because it's new to everyone. And so these opportunities create, I think are playing field leveling moments in this evolution of innovation that are, really critical, that ambition and just that making time to be curious, figure out how it can integrate into whatever world you're in can be really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Jason, it's been a fabulous conversation. My social team never lets me end these without a little bit of oddity. So I've got a handful of little open-ended questions for some quick, short answers from you, just to get to know you a little bit better, if that's okay.
Okay.
This first question gets everyone. If you could switch legs with any animal, which would it be?
Oh, man. Immediately, I thought about a deer because they're so fast, and that's cool. But I'll tell you what, I have a new favorite animal. I'm an animal guy, grown up loving animals, and my new favorite animal, and I'll probably die with this being my favorite animal, is the octopus. Did you know that an octopus has 9 brains? There's a central brain, and I haven't studied this, but I've read it in a few places. Each leg has its own whatever a brain is, right? So I think I'd go with octopus. That would look really weird, but it'd be cool.
That's probably the most unique answer we've gotten so far. So congratulations, we're off to a great start. Do you have a secret talent?
I don't have many secrets. I think my secret, I don't know, this is going to sound really cliche, but like I have a passion for my wife and kids. I have chosen the lifestyle I have so that I'm not spending a lot of time away from them. And I don't know, I'm deeply passionate about my role as a husband and a father. So I don't know, maybe that's my secret talent.
I love it. Do you have a favorite pizza topping?
Well, if a pizza doesn't have pepperoni, then I'm not at my happiest.
Your favorite subject in grade school?
Ooh, grade school. That's hard. I was the dumb kid in grade school. I didn't realize this at the time, but I was a little smarter than where they were teaching. And so I always felt like I was the dumb one. So I actually had a really hard time in grade school.
But it turns out you were just bored mostly.
I was bored out of my mind.
Dream vacation destination?
Well, I want to go to Madagascar. There's too many. I love oceany places. I love Hawaii, Madagascar. I'd love to go down to southern Mexico, anywhere where I could scuba dive. But I've really fallen in love with certain parts of Europe. And if I could, I would go spend months living in different places in Europe.
I love that. We always need to ask, team cat or team dog?
Oh, that's a hard one. I have recently had a dog, and I currently have a cat, and man, both of them are annoying in their own different ways. I think I'm more of a dog person because of the love they give you, and more of a cat person because you can leave them alone for a long time.
Love that. And very political. And if you were a flavor of ice cream, what flavor would Jason be?
Well, I mean, chocolate's my flavor, so I'd have to be chocolate.
Okay. Well, Jason, thanks for joining us in the Pluralsight Spotlight. It's been great to have a conversation about soft skills and personal branding and communication and everything else. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Adam.
And to our audience, just want to thank you for your time. We'll put links to the courses Jason referenced and anything else that you could glean or want to click through on this episode. Really appreciate your time. Give us a subscription or a follow, and we look forward to you joining us next time on Pluralsight Spotlight.